Ever imagine shrinking yourself down, like down to the size of a molecule?
Oh, wow.
What would it be like? I think
Well,
you'd find yourself in this crazy world,
hmm,
like a world of constant motion,
right.
a microscopic mosh pit,
Yeah, yeah.
everything's just bouncing and colliding.
Absolutely.
It's kind of chaotic, right?
It is.
But all that chaos, that's the driving force behind this thing called diffusion.
Right.
And diffusion, that's how smells travel. It's how nutrients get to your cells.
Yeah, pretty much explains, I mean, it's a really fundamental process, explains so much of how the world works.
Yeah, it really is.
And you know what's really wild?
What's that?
This like totally random movement of particles.
Mm-hmm.
It actually leads to like we can see patterns, predictable patterns.
Oh, interesting.
And there's this fundamental law of physics that governs it all. It's called Fick's first law.
Fick's first law. That sounds a little intimidating.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
got kind of a scary name.
Yeah.
But the idea behind it is actually pretty simple.
Okay, good.
Like imagine you're in a super crowded room.
Okay.
Everyone's just crammed in there,
Yeah.
trying to find a little bit of space. Naturally, what are people going to do?
Spread out.
They're going to move away from where it's crowded to where there's more room.
Right. That makes sense.
That's like basically diffusion, but on a molecular level. Particles move from areas of high concentration where it's crowded to areas of low concentration where there's more space.
So it's all about finding some breathing room, basically.
Exactly. And Fick's first law, it just gives us a way to kind of put numbers to that movement, like quantify how fast it's all happening.
Okay. So if, like, I open a bottle of perfume,
Mm-hmm.
those molecules are basically doing a mad dash out of the bottle into the air, which is less concentrated?
Exactly. They're out of there.
Yeah.
And the bigger the difference in concentration,
Yeah.
the faster they're going to spread out. Think about it like, rolling a ball down a hill.
Oh.
The steeper the hill,
The faster the ball goes.
faster that ball's going to roll. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing here. The greater that concentration difference, the faster that rate of diffusion is going to be.
Okay, so that concentration difference, that's like the engine driving this whole diffusion thing.
It's the fuel.
But if it's all random, right, like you said, these molecules are just bouncing around,
Right.
how can we predict how fast it's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
It seems kind of chaotic. Can we really put a number on chaos?
That's the really cool thing about Fick's law, right?
Okay.
It tells us that the rate of diffusion, we call that flux,
Okay.
is proportional to this thing called the concentration gradient.
Okay, concentration gradient, another big word.
It sounds fancy, I know.
Yeah.
But really, it just means how much the concentration changes over a certain distance.
Okay.
Like, think of it, it's like the steepness of that hill we were talking about.
Got it.
Steeper the gradient, the faster the diffusion.
So it's not just how many particles are there, but also how squished together they are, how densely packed they are.
You got it.
Okay.
But wait, there's one more piece to this puzzle.
Oh, there's more.
There's another factor. It's called the diffusion coefficient.
Another coefficient. Okay, this is where I start to lose track a little.
All right. Let me try to make it simple.
Okay, thanks.
Think of the diffusion coefficient as like, how easy or how hard is it for a substance to move through like a specific material?
Okay.
Like imagine you're trying to walk across a room,
Hmm.
but the room's like totally packed with people.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
Oh, yeah. You're bumping into everyone.
You're going to be slow.
Yeah.
Now imagine that same room, but it's totally empty.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be zooming across.
Much easier.
Right.
Yeah.
So some substances diffuse a lot easier than others, and it depends on things like their size and what that environment is like.
So a teeny tiny molecule, that's going to have an easier time than like a giant bulky one.
Exactly. Like picture a little sports car weaving through traffic versus a big old truck.
Makes sense.
Right. And the type of environment, that matters too. Like oxygen, for example, it moves super fast through the air.
Okay.
But glucose,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot slower moving through water.
Why is that?
Well, oxygen is smaller for one thing, and air molecules, they're more spread out, so there's less stuff in the way.
Oh, okay. Less resistance.
Exactly. Less resistance.
So the diffusion coefficient, it's kind of like a speed limit then for how fast something can diffuse.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like a measure of how easily a substance can get around.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So we've got the concentration gradient, right? It's like the push behind the diffusion. And then we have the diffusion coefficient, which is like the slipperiness or how easy it is to move.
Hmm.
But how do we actually use these things together? Like, how do we actually predict how fast diffusion is going to happen.
Well, that's where that equation for Fick's first law comes in.
Okay.
Remember, flux.
Yeah, that's the rate of diffusion.
Right. So it basically says that flux is equal to the diffusion coefficient multiplied by the concentration gradient.
Hold on. You're telling me we can predict something as random as, molecules moving around with a simple equation?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
It seems too simple.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's really powerful, this equation.
Okay.
We can use it to, figure out how long it takes for a drug to reach a certain level in your blood.
Oh, wow.
Or how fast pollutants might spread in the environment.
So this isn't just some theoretical thing. It has real-world uses.
Oh, absolutely. Fick's
Uh-huh.
law. It's fundamental. It's behind so many things, so many phenomena. It even helps us understand how stars evolve.
Stars. Oh, wait. What does diffusion have to do with stars?
Well, it turns out that diffusion, it plays a big role in how elements move around inside a star.
Huh.
So you've got these heavier elements that are produced in the core of the star
Yeah.
through nuclear fusion,
Right.
and they gradually diffuse outwards,
Mm-hmm.
and that affects the star's brightness, its temperature, even how long it lives.
Wow, that's incredible. I never would have thought something as simple as particles spreading out could be connected to something as massive as a star.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It really is all about this constant movement of molecules, this Brownian motion, remember?
Yeah, it's like a microscopic mosh pit.
Exactly. Every particle is constantly bumping into other particles, taking this crazy zigzag path.
Yeah.
But when you zoom out and look at the big picture, all that randomness, it creates predictable patterns.
Oh, interesting.
It helps us understand how things mix and spread.
Okay, so we can't, track every single molecule.
Right.
But we can still understand how a whole bunch of them will behave.
Exactly. It's the beauty of statistical mechanics. We use these statistical methods to predict that average behavior of a system, even if we don't know what each little piece is doing.
That's pretty cool. So we've been talking about particles, right? Moving from high concentration to low concentration. But what about other things, like heat? Does heat diffuse the same way?
That's a great question. And you know what? Heat transfer. It's actually really similar to how particles diffuse.
Okay.
So heat also flows from areas of high concentration, so in this case that means high temperature, to areas of low concentration, which is low temperature.
So, if I touch a hot stove, the heat is diffusing into my hand because my hand is cooler.
Exactly. And just like with particles, the bigger that temperature difference, the faster that heat's going to flow.
So it all comes back to that concentration gradient.
Exactly. And there's even a law that governs the rate of heat flow. It's similar to Fick's law. It's called Fourier's law.
Wow. So diffusion, this idea of diffusion,
Yeah.
it's way bigger than I thought. It's not just about perfume or dye. It's really a basic principle. It's everywhere. It governs how things move at this microscopic level.
Yeah.
And it affects everything, even the stars.
Yeah. And that's what's so amazing about science, right?
What's that?
Sometimes the things that seem really simple can lead us to these huge insights about how the world works.
That reminds me of when I was a kid. I tried to make tie-dye shirts once. Thought I could just dump a bunch of colors together and it looked cool. But diffusion, it had other plans.
What happened?
It all blended together into this muddy brown mess.
Oh, no.
I learned the hard way that you got to control diffusion.
You do. It's a natural process,
Yeah.
but we can, in a lot of cases, manipulate it.
Mhm.
Think about, medicine, how we use diffusion to control how a drug is released from a pill,
Oh, right.
or how we purify water using filters.
So even though diffusion is all about random motion, we can still use it, make it work for us.
Totally. When we understand how it works, the principles of diffusion, we can design systems that use this natural phenomenon to get specific results.
It really is amazing, though, how all this random motion at the molecular level ends up creating these predictable outcomes, things we can even control.
It's the beauty of science, finding order in the chaos. And Fick's law. It's like a perfect example of that, right? Simple equation, but it tells us so much. It connects this tiny world of molecules to these big things we see all around us.
Yeah, that's true. So for anyone listening, maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed, it is a lot of science. What's the one thing they should remember about diffusion? The key takeaway.
I think the biggest thing to remember is that diffusion is everywhere, I mean it.
It really is.
It's a fundamental process, shapes the world in so many ways that we don't even realize.
Yeah.
I mean, the smell of coffee, how it fills a room, that's diffusion. The way our
Wow.
bodies absorb nutrients,
Hmm.
diffusion, it's always at work. And even though it's all this random motion, we can still understand it. Fick's law gives us that.
It really is mind-boggling, just particles spreading out.
Yeah.
But the consequences are huge.
It is. It is. I think it just goes to show that even the simplest things, can hold these incredible secrets just waiting for us to uncover them. Maybe next time you're like watching food coloring swirl in a glass of water,
Oh, yeah.
you'll think about Fick's law.
Yeah, totally.
Think about that invisible dance of molecules.
Yeah, and how much it actually affects everything around us.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is. Well, thanks for breaking it all down.
My pleasure.